Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Hello, Robert. I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully everyone's having a good day, good weekend. Sprint's coming along well. So let's see if I get into this. Let's go here real quick. So as you guys all know, we have started our 9th sprint and we're focusing on APIs, application program interfaces. On Saturday, you all were with Dennis, and I know that he was going over a lot of the theory portion. And so we were discussing about three-tier architecture and how everything relates. So I know we've touched on that a few times. Dennis has just went over that again on Saturday. So I'm going to avoid any of the theory stuff for now, unless there are a lot of questions. And if so, then I will go into the theory a little bit more towards the end of this class. But today I just want to show you APIs, play with APIs, play with Postman a little bit. So maybe it'll all make a little bit more sense to you. Before I start, are there any outstanding questions? All right, sounds good.
Robert, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Maybe you can, do you know where for Postman, where I can download collection?
You should just be able to go to postman.com. Let's see, Postman. It's first link right here.
Yes, Postman read docs, but I couldn't find where it, when Dennis, where actually Aksat explained us, where he says that we can download collection, but I couldn't find where is the link where I can comment from.
I think he means the collections of requests from.
Yeah, request for Postman.
I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to specifically. I'll make a note of it and see if I can dig up some info for you.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Yeah, as long as you guys are can download Postman, you're good. We're going to provide you with the API documentation as far as WoStork goes, and you'll have everything you need with that.
Thank you.
So, of course, WoStork, this has become a very familiar site to you all at this point. We've clicked around 1,000 times over and seen all the different pages and bugs that exist, and we all know what can be done within the application at this point. And of course, all of this was focusing on the front end, the user interface, right? All this within the web browser, everything that we see is what we've been testing. Then we started off, or rather, then we continued with databases and started seeing how things were stored and how things related to each other and the type of information you can discover within a database. Now we want to go ahead and basically bridge that gap and figure out how this application is talking with that backend database, how it's storing information, how this application is getting your login information and all that kind of stuff. So let's start off with, say, the sign-up process. And I'm going to go ahead and open our console tools. And if we click network, this is going to show us all the traffic that's going on within the web page. And this is going to be where we can start seeing some of those different API requests and responses that are being made. So first thing, right, most basic part of this application is to create an account. So when we create an account, this information, of course, needs to be passed and stored in the database and verified. And then something needs to be returned to us so we can continue our session within the WoStork application. So we can try to add things to our cart and go through the whole checkout process and all of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and just make up an email, tester 3456 at gmail.com. .com password. Don't care about any of that. All right. Now, right now we see we have nothing in our network, in our network panel. So what happens if I click sign up? All right, now we got a whole bunch of things, well, a couple things anyways, that we see here within our network view. So of course we navigated to the next page. So everything was good with the sign up process, but things needed to go on in the back end, right? When I click that submit button or that sign up button, information is being sent and information is being returned. So how do I know exactly what happened here? So if I look here at these specific ones called tokens, this is going to be the API request I am looking for. And if I go around here, this is also showing me some other different APIs, right? And how do I know they're APIs? Well, look at this request URL, right? I see clearly, right? I have this API in the URL itself, and I'm getting all of the associated information with it, such as status code, response code, and all that stuff that we need. So in this case, since we signed up, it sent us a token, or rather it responded to us with a token. And let me go, is this one? Yeah, right here. So this sign up one right here. So this is an API call that was made. So when I click that sign up button on that registration page just a moment ago, it sent this request to this specific URL. Now, if I scroll down a little bit, I can see that within the payload, or within the body of that request, contains this information. And this is the email that I just created, and this is the password that I just sent over. So here I can see what exactly was sent in that response I made to sign up. Now, again, this is what was sent. And now there needs to be a response that was given to me, or a token that was generated in this case. And so if I go to here, I see this one token, but this request method options, we don't want this. We want this post, right? And so now I can see, all right, this was returned to me after I initiated the sign up API request. And within here, again, I can see all this information that I just passed. And then within here, I have this. And so what is this? And let me expand this just a little bit. All right, and so I see this access token that was sent to me, right, within the response. And it's just a bunch of, random alphanumeric characters. And now if I go to my application tab and I go into my cookies and I go into WoStork and I start looking through all of this. And now if you guys remember or are familiar with cookies, can anybody tell me what cookies are?
Little bit.
What was that?
Yeah, a little bit familiar.
Does anybody want to try to guess?
That is something that was downloaded before, so you don't need to download everything again. You have at least half of the information downloaded from the first time.
Okay.
Session.
Session information.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So both very good answers. Session information would be more accurate. So just to kind of distinguish between the two, when you're, say with this site WoStork, right? After we log in, we want to be able to navigate throughout the website with throughout the application without logging in every time, right? We don't want to get to one page, log in, get to another page, log in. That's going to be a pain in the ass. Same thing with, think of your Facebook. You log in once and it continues, it remembers your login information. And the same thing with a lot of other websites as well that have a login functionality. Now, something that's more secure, like a bank, that's not going to keep you logged in forever. But when you're interacting with a web application, and especially when you're signing in, there's going to be certain information related to your session. And when we say session, all that means is when you open that browser and you're starting to do something in a website, that's a session that you've opened up. And within that session, some information might be related to your user profile. And so we want to save those things within the browser. And so without even you knowing, this is just going on in the background. And it stores certain information. And in this case, it's storing a access token. And this access token is going to be stored within your cookies. And looking at it, it makes absolutely no sense. There's no value when you just look at it as is right now. However, this is the token value. This is the token value that is constantly sent back to the WoStork database, or rather the WoStork APIs. Rather the WoStork servers, all right? So every time you're going from one page to another, that token is being sent along with all the requests and everything that you're doing within the application. So it knows you're a logged in user. This represents your username and password combination. You submit or you log in that one time. It creates this alphanumeric value for you, and it's just going to be saved within your browser until you log out. Now, depending the application, it can live forever, and other applications, it will expire almost immediately. And so here we see, let's just open these up. Oops. And so here we can see that there is an expiration date tied to it. And in this case, this is going to expire on the 13th. So this has a lifespan of 8 days. And after 8 days, it will ask you to sign in again because this token is no longer valid. All right. So again, in summary, when you sign in, for security purposes, we don't want your password floating around and existing the whole time, right, for anybody to see. We just want to send that one time, verify that this account is legit, and then it sends us that unique token that we're using throughout the application. So here, so we had this token, we had this response, it gave us this value, and this value is what's stored within your cookies. And let's click around a little bit more. So I'm just going to clear these out so we can, so we won't lose track of everything that's going on here. Let's do skip. Let's skip this. Let's see, medical. And so all I'm doing right now is just kind of continuing going through the application specifically within a logged in user's profile and just looking at the different network activity. And as I see, as I keep going through and clicking things, there are different things that pop up on this network tab because there are different requests that are being made. And so again, we can see that we have this medical traffic right here, and we see another API. And this is a GET request. And Dennis, I believe, went over all this with you guys. What does it mean when it's a GET request?
No, we didn't cover methods.
Oh, we did not? Okay, gotcha. Dennis is on the line, cool. So when we're going through this application and we're simply trying to get information, right? We want to see the information that exists within my profile. So I want to get the information for my profile. Well, I have a request method of type get. And I know that this is covered a bit in some of the videos. However, let me just, sorry, I just want to pull this up.
We covered it. It's in our homework.
Okay, yes, it should be. Just want to show you guys real quick for those of you guys who have not gotten to it, right? So we have these different method types that we're going to be focusing on. And it's going to be a get, a post, a put, or a delete. Now, mostly all you guys are really going to be using most of the time. I mean, well, these four are going to be very common for you to use, but mostly you're going to be using get and post. So all you're going to be doing is asking the server to retrieve a specific resource. And in some of the case examples I just showed you right now, it was related to medical within the user's profile. And this post, we did a post request when we signed up for a new account. So just keep that in mind, right? So whenever you are trying to just retrieve something or get something, that's the type of method that you're using, a get request. Otherwise, you are going to be posting whenever you're creating something new. And in the case of a new account creation, you're creating something new, of course, right? And so that's going to be a post request. And so that's how come again, right? We see here, we have this get request because all we did was request the information that is related to this user based off of that login token that we just saw that we got after we made that post request in order to sign up and navigate through the application. So don't worry, we're going to play with Postman in just a second, but I just want to show you how all this is actually just playing out within the application itself. And one thing I do know that we've mentioned before, though, is different status codes. And so same thing when you go to a web page that no longer exists, you'll see an error message, right? Either say a 404, page not found, or 500, which is like an internal server error, I believe. And there's a bunch of different codes that can be returned to you. And when we look at our network traffic, it's telling us the status code of each of these, right? So 304 in this case, which lots of 200s. Ideally, we just always want to see 200. If we see 200, that means everything's good, everything's working as expected. There are no issues. In this case of 304, it's not a critical issue, but it means something. What does 304 mean?
It's redirect, I believe, right?
304, not modified. This is used for caching purposes. It tells the client that the response has not been modified, so the client will continue to use the same cache version of the response. So all that means is I already have that icon saved within my cookies, essentially, within my local DB in my browser. And it's determined that nothing has changed since it was sent to me last. So there was no action taken. There was no actual response returned to me, except the status code of 304, not modified. All right, and so we go through this, and there's all sorts of different statuses, You do not need to memorize these, so do not worry about that. But you do need to understand that there are different statuses. And each status is going to have a corresponding status message. So when you're testing, when you're doing your thing at your first job, and you're coming across these issues, be sure to, of course, look at your network tab within the console dev tools, and then even within console over here, right? We can see that we're going to have some issues, and sometimes it will tell us the response code, and you can start looking into that as well. So these developer tools are very powerful and are going to help you be a good QA. And it's just going to give you the morsels or some pieces of information, some hints, so you can start doing further research and try to figure out what's going on and give more information within that bug that you create, which the developer is going to work off of. So far, right, we've been going through the application itself. I want to just show you what's going on in the background when you're clicking these buttons. So let's go ahead and do this without the application. And so we're going to be using Postman. And before we even do this, let me take one step back and show you guys this. So this is the WoStork API documentation that you're going to need in order to make these API requests. And of course, it's stored here within Confluence. And if you just go under WoStork, it's going to take you here. But just look, it's a child page within WoStork. So all you got to do is click API. And you'll see all this information. So here we see some of the different APIs that we need depending what we're trying to do. And some of these might already look familiar to you if you saw them in the network tab just a moment ago, right? So this is what was used when I signed up, right? And I passed my email and password. This is the request that was sent to me, or this was how we got the authorization token, that alphanumeric value that we're going to be using throughout the session, throughout the duration of our session, right? And so all this is showing us is what it's expecting to receive when that request is made. So when it comes to this sign up, within the body of the request, because we have headers, we have parameters, and we have a body. All right, so within the body, we want to include this information. If we don't have this information in this format, it won't be a valid request, and you're going to see an issue. You're going to see an error status code. Now, we know that zip code and promo code are not required when signing up, right? We just saw that. I signed up, all I supplied was my, my email and my password, right? I didn't supply a zip code or promo code. So these are not required, but these can be included within the body. Do I have a question?
Maybe could you show us some example how to apply it in the Postman program?
Yes. I'll just get into that in 1 second. Just want to show you this documentation and that it's existing here within Confluence. So be sure to check this out, guys. This is going to have a lot of good information to work off of. So let's go to Postman. So here I already have some stuff saved. And all I did was create let's see, how do I go about this? So clicking new, you can go ahead and click this request, right? And this is just gonna create test sign up, we'll call it. And I will put this in WoStork, save. All right, and so just clicking this new and clicking request, giving it a name, it's gonna go ahead then and create this test over here that exists on the side. And then we're gonna see this screen right here. And so knowing that I have the API documentation available to me, that's how I'm gonna get the information I need in order to make that request. And so let's go ahead and take this sign up URL. Oops. And since I am signing up, I am not going to use a getter. I am going to use a post. because I'm creating a new account, right? And so I want to post this information to the server. So it creates this new resource, it processes it, and it gets stored in the database and then gives me that authentication token that I need. So first thing first, right? You need to know the URL, just plug that in here and select the correct method type. Now, once we have that, we know that this needs to exist within the body, all right? So I have, let's see, form data, and it's just going to give me this nice table view. And so I can go ahead and create everything I need just like this. So I need a key value pair. And so coming here, we see this email and this password and this promo code and this zip code. These are all keys. All right, so anything that is sitting on the left side of these dots are going to be referred to as the key. And then on the right side is going to be the value. So the value that's associated to the key. And now we need to make sure that we put in these key names exactly as they're expected to be. So we have email, we have a password, and then for my email, I'm just gonna make something up, tester 33 whatever at gmail.com, and my password is gonna be tester at 123456. Cool. So I have my key, I have my value. This is looking good. Let me make sure that that is the case, right? Body, low store, blah, blah, blah. All right, I think this looks good. So let's see if this works. Fingers crossed. Hey, it worked. And so looking at this, I have successfully created a new account using this email. Now, how do you know that that happened? Well, if it didn't work, if I was not able to create an email using this sign up page, I'm going to get a different status message. So look, I have a status message right here of what 201 created. The request has been fulfilled and resulted in a new resource being created. And this, what we see here is referred to as a JSON file format. And all JSON stands for is JavaScript object notation. Now, don't get too wrapped up in that. Don't get too concerned in that. Just know though, understand that it's sending me back an object that represents my user profile. And so at this time, I've only passed it very minimal information. And I've only passed it an email and a password. So that's all it knows about me. So all of this is supposed to represent me. So if you guys remember in the, was it the Wostark database, there was the, I think it was called the users table, right? And that's where you're getting the just basic information, right? You get to see all the users that exist. You get to see their email and like just the basic information that's related to them. And so most of this information is probably coming from that users table. Now, fantastic. So now that I know that I've been able to sign up, now I can start doing more things. And let's just try this one more time, right? Since I know that this email now exists, if I try sending this again, I would expect to get an error, right? So let's confirm. Boom, right? I got an error. What's my status code? 422. Unprocessable entity. The request was well formed, but was unable to be followed due to semantic errors. So we know that the way we sent our request, the key value pairs, that's good, that's right. the URL is valid. That's fine, right? But here, just reading this JSON, obviously, email has already been taken. And as we know, we just created this account. Do you have any questions on this part so far?
Yes, Robert. So if, let's say if you test the application and you send this request again, and it actually creates a duplicate, that would be a bug, right?
Yeah, if you're able to send this again and again and again and again without changing that email, yeah, there's a whole issue, another issue going on. That's a big bug.
Okay.
Yeah, and these are two basically test cases that we already kind of covered. We haven't kind of wrapped them in the actual test cases, but creating a non-existing account, brand new, you should see that it was created. That's the first test case for API, for creating an account in particular. And the second test case is you trying to create existing account, and you expect to see this message back, right, instead of creation. And yeah, you can think about some other scenarios, some other test cases.
Right, all we're doing is always testing. We're always thinking about test cases, right? And so we've spent a lot of time within the UI to see what was broken, what's working, and what's not working, and everything. Now, in the scenario where for some reason the front end isn't developed yet, it's not accessible, or it's just deemed as faster for you to test if you just test the APIs directly, because that's all we're concerned about right now. And then this is how you go about it, all right? I don't need to have the application or at least the front end of the application up and running. I don't care about that. All I'm testing right now is the core functionality by testing the APIs and making sure that's working as expected. So great, we went ahead, created an email, tried creating another one, and we're seeing these different status messages. So that's good. Now let's go ahead and log in. Now, I already have the login prepared over here, but same thing, right? You would just create new, request, and you're gonna get this same view, the same blank test setup that we saw just a moment ago. And you need to go ahead and prepare the body and pass in the expected key and value pairs. And let's go to that documentation again real quick. And so here is the next URL, right? And so auth token, same thing here. See, auth token, right? Again, when we sign in, we need that token. So we created the account, but now in order for us to play around with the other APIs and get more information about my user profile or get information about dispensaries or things like that, I need to be in a logged in state. And right now, I'm not in a logged in state. All I did was create that account and verify that it does exist. So how can I go ahead and get that token? Well, I can use this OAuth or authorization token URL. And here I can see what it's expecting in the request body. And so again, right, key value pairs. We see grant type, we see password, we see username. And these are all strings. So strings, just characters, right? Here for grant type, we need to use password as the value that's associated to that key. So do remember that when you are doing this yourself, all right? When you're creating that body and you're using this grant type, the expected value is going to be password. And so you'll see that right here. We have this grant type that I already created, and the value is password. Next one, right? Password and then username. So these are the three keys that were expected, and this is the API URL or API endpoint that we're utilizing. And we are making a post request in this case as well, because we are creating our session right now. Now, let me use that email from a moment ago. And was the password the same? Nope, 5656. And then let me run this. Great. So using the email that I just registered with, I use this API, this endpoint, in order to log in. And now I was sent this key as the response within that request. So now using this token, I can go ahead and do whatever the site will allow my user type to do via the APIs. So if I go to, say, do this user, let's see what we have here, API user. And then again, right, let's just go here. This is the next one. So we have this API, this endpoint URL, API/user, API/user, same thing, right? So now in here, I need to have a header of this authorization bearer. So before we were putting this information within the body. And so typically for security reasons, whenever you're passing that kind of information, especially when it's a username password combination, that should be within the body. We want that to be secure. We don't want that to just be exposed for anybody to potentially pick up and find out what our password is. So now that we've already signed up or signed in and received an authorization token, I can go ahead and place that in the header. And so let's go back here. And now I have clicked on this headers tab right here, and I see this key of authorization and this bearer, right? And I have this big text. So this is just from before. I'm just going to delete this. Just making sure I miss nothing. There, great. And then I'm just gonna, oops. Sign up, login, copy, user, this here, boom. So now I can go ahead and send this request. And this is the response that it just gave me. And so this is all the information that's related to the user that I just created. And it's sending me everything back in this JSON format. Now, this might look familiar because I believe this might be pretty much the same thing that we saw when we initially created an account. And I'll just create another one real quick. Almost the same, very similar, right? We're getting this initial piece, and then within users, I'm getting a little bit more information, right? So such as like these medical recommendations and approvals that we didn't see before when we signed up. But using this user API or using the get method and leveraging this user endpoint for the WoStork servers, for the WoStork application, I can go ahead and get all the information that's related to my user. And this is going to be essentially the way that most of the application is going to work. As you go through different areas of the application, there are going to be specific URLs or API endpoints that are leveraged in order to get the necessary information for that user that is then going to be displayed on the page. And we can check out a few of these others. We have this user profile one, and same thing. Let's see what we get for user profile. I don't know why my mouse does not want to behave. Come on. All right, so I have my new one, send this. So this is just my profile information. Okay, so it looks like to sign up, profile information, user profile. Still very similar, but not exactly. User medical profile. Why does it do this to me? All right, now we're seeing a little bit of different stuff, right? And this is medical. Let's do this. Let's go back to the application and let me mess around with this medical. And I'm just going to start selecting a couple of these. Great. And say yes. All this stuff. Great. Glaucoma. Hopefully I never have any of these, but just clicking things to get some test data. Oh, geez. All right, more questions. All right, cool, cool. But let's just go back to network real quick and see what just happened. Right, all medical. Went ahead and look, see, so right here we have this medical API, and I made a post request. And this post is just updating my user profile. And so here we have the different keys and the values that I selected. And so all of this is just being returned to the server, and it's updating my user profile within the database. So let's just finish clicking a couple of these. Insomnia is always a pain, right? All right, great. So now if I go here again, all right, I see all this stuff. I have all these options. Now what happens if I make that API call? So user medical profile again, this is all we have now. Let's see. So I know this was one of the options. Let's see this API all medical. Look at that. Wait. This is sending me all the CSS of the page, which I don't care about this. So, okay, so I got a 404 error, and here we can see that it's showing me the 404 page. So something went wrong here. What went wrong? Oh, I see why. Post. Boom. All right, so I updated the method type, post, and now I'm getting all this information back. Yeah, and then this is everything I just selected, and it's just all the information that's related to my medical profile. And then here we can go ahead and update the medical profile if we wanted to. Right, again, we're gonna have the authorization token within the headers, and then here within the body would be each of the different options that are available to change, right? So you need to know the keys, right? So here we have contact frequency, and it looks like I have that here as well. And so contact frequency, and so this is what I would change with this post request here. But ultimately, if you keep clicking around the website, and especially not just even in my profile, but within the shop page or the dispensary pages itself, you're going to be making all these GET requests, and all these GET requests have different APIs or different URLs that are associated to them. And so using that is how you can test with Postman and see the information that you get back. Now, when we look at our API documentation page here, we only have a handful of URLs that were provided to us, right? And most of these are related to the user profile. Sign up, get your authorization token, get the basic user information, get user profile information, and that's it. Now, we know that there's way more within the website. And so if you're curious and you guys start getting comfortable at doing all these different requests, well, just keep clicking around the website and see what else you come across, because you can essentially reverse engineer the site and start figuring out which are going to be the APIs, the API URLs that you need.
Yeah, and reverse engineering is the most important technique for hackers, actually, because they never have access to the documentation. So that's how they actually figure out how the system works and try to find those gaps.
Yeah, exactly that. If you understand how to look at network traffic and you understand how to read some of the errors that are going to be displayed in the console log, you know that's very powerful information, and you could do some nefarious things if you're a hacker in the scenario that Dennis just mentioned. And you could do great things as a QA when you're testing things and you notice things are the way they should not be, and you may have some security concerns because we're passing sensitive information in the header as opposed to the body, for example.
Yeah, and in this case, if you don't use these gaps in the application for your own benefit, it's called ethical hacker, right? Is that the correct spelling?
Yeah, ethical hacker, or white hat hacker. So they're one and the same typically. We think hackers, bad people, and they're called black hat hackers or just hackers in general. But the good guys that are doing it, ethical hackers or white hat hackers. And those guys are in very serious demand. And when you're talking about like cybersecurity companies, those are the guys that they hire in order to find any exploits or gaps within the security system at a specific company.
So I think it's fair to say that that was your introduction to to like this security testing.
Yeah, with that and understanding how to use the DOM and remove certain elements such as like an ad blocker, that's very powerful stuff when it comes to navigating the internet. All right, guys. What questions?
Did you do it last time or something, Robert? Because yeah. I did last session. Yeah, I removed that banner as well.
Yeah, I did when it was applicable. It just popped up, and I was like, all right, let me just do it here. But I don't think we've done it for this class unless you just did it. But all right, guys, what questions do y'all have? Speak now.
Robert, can we go over again? Can you just repeat what is a body? So what is a key? Like in short, it's a body, it's a key,
sure.
It's this. Yeah.
Sure. So let me just pull this up. I think this is just a nice, very simple visual that helps break it down. So this overall rectangle that we see here, this is what your overall request is made of. And so within your request, you have different pieces to it. And at the high level, we have a URL, right? And we saw the URL in our case is going to be one of these, right? test-API, test-API, or one of the many others that we can see when we are clicking around and looking at the network traffic, right? So this is
Robert, sorry. When we adding something, we are changing our URL, depends of our parameters. So
yeah, it depends what we want, depends what we're trying to access. If I'm trying to get profile information, then I don't want the sign up URL.
Okay, thank you.
So you're going to use a specific URL depending the information you're trying to get or the information you're trying to post.
And yeah, it's called path. You can think about it as like a folder on your computer, right? So you have a whole bunch of different folders, so a whole bunch of different paths within the application, and those are all different. They all accept different requests.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. And a great example of that is, just within here, like, so we have this dispensaries is a specific path within this URL or within the server name of WoStore. All right. So we want to provide that specific piece of information at the top of the request. And in this case, it's going to be, again, one of the ones that we just went over. Then once we have identified that, we want to clarify, or rather specify, the method that we're using. So do we want to post something? Am I trying to create a new record? Am I trying to create a new resource? Am I trying to create something new? All right, so am I trying to post something, or am I trying to get something? Do I just want to get my profile information? Do I just want to get this dispensary information? Do I just want to get my medical information, right? So we want to specify the type of method that we're using. And we're focusing on get and post. However, as I mentioned before, there are some others here, two others. We have this put and delete, where put asks is basically an update, and delete, of course, is deleting. All in all you really need to focus on is get and post. At the end of the day, though, if you understand how to make these different API calls using Postman, whether it's a put, delete, or any one of the other method types that are out there, you'll understand how to do it, because everything is following this same type of request format. So we want to specify the method. And then we have headers. Headers is provides certain information about you, the client, whether it is information related to the device that you're using, the browser that you're using, the operating system, right? Things like that, that are not necessarily sensitive data. Now, we also, as we saw before, included our token, our access token within the headers, all right? This information makes no sense to nobody, and it does not expose your password or your username or anything like that. And so it's not considered sensitive information. And that's going to be included in your header. And then within the body, that's where you can include all sorts of information, especially when it comes to data that you want to change or things that you want to post. Right, so in the case of like that medical profile, the frequency of smoking, the medical issues I have, the case of sign up, right, the password and email combination, all of that will reside within the body of that request. And so overall request is made of those 4 pieces. And that's how you're going to be interacting with APIs, or really that's how you've been interacting with web applications that have APIs implemented that are retrieving different information or creating new accounts for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And then so if we go back to Postman, right, exactly what we just saw, we have the URL here, we have the method type, and we're including some information within our headers, if applicable, and information within the body, if applicable. Let's see, does capitalization matter? Good question. Does capitalization matter, Dennis? I don't believe.
I mean, sometimes it can matter, but yeah, I would just stick to documentation. You can try it out on your own. I think usually it's not, but
yeah, I want to say it's not. But you guys are going to be practicing on Postman. So try it out and see if you capitalize something, if you get the same response or not. Easy, all this stuff. There's so much out there, you can like forget little things, but it's so easy to just validate things on the fly. So when you're practicing, see if you get a different response. Let's see, and also, can you show how to delete with Postman the user we just created? So good question. Now, we're not going to be able to delete a user that we just created. So if you recall the last week when we were doing databases, we were talking a bit about primary keys and foreign keys. And basically, there's a relationship. All these tables have a relationship to one another. Somehow, some way, there's some linkage between one record and another record. So you can't, and then even if you may have tried this in the database, you can't just delete a user without getting some weird issue about primary key, foreign key constraints, right? And so that's for data integrity purposes. We don't want to have fractured data. We don't want to have data that's just sitting there and the origin record is no longer there. So you can't delete a user. Now, one thing that you may be able to do is probably delete an item that you have in your cart, because that's something that you can do within the application, right? I go to carts and I can remove something. So when that action is done, an API request is being made for that action to happen. So if you go into the network tab, you'll see what that URL is, and you'll be able to delete something that way. Let's see, I don't think we have permissions to edit DB. If you don't, that's a good thing, because last thing we want is for you guys to delete tables or do something major by accident. And
yeah, just one remark here. So doing these operations through the API is not the same as doing them through the database. Because if you connect to database, you use another type of account, which is kind of admin account. But when you use an API, you kind of use kind of applicant account, right?
Yeah, that's
so basically like pretty much anything that you can do on the website as an applicant, the customer, right? That pretty much the same you can do through the API. Well, sometimes some of the features are actually hidden on UI, so you cannot see them on UI, but you can do them through API. So there may be an option of deleting a user, which is I doubt, but because it's API, there could be something. But we don't have really enough of documentation.
Yeah, great point, Dennis. But the one thing we know you can do if you're trying to mess with delete is play with the shopping cart, see what the API is, and you should be able to replicate that action using delete.
Yep. So I would say post would be one of the first methods that you will always use, just because you need at least login or maybe create an account. That will be post. And then if you want to get like the status of your cart or like your information, that's always going to be get, kind of passive one, right? And then if you want to like delete something from your cart, that yes, going to be delete. And put is kind of update. I'm not sure if we have that one documented anywhere.
I wonder, a good example, little challenge for you guys to see if there is a put request is that same cart scenario where you're deleting something. So you have multiple items or a multiple of the same item. So you have 5 of, a brownie. See what happens when you change the quantity, when you just subtract 1. See what kind of request that is.
Yeah, there is actually a lot more of different types. like some options and like some other ones, but those are usually not that common.
Yeah. So don't go down the rabbit hole of all this information that's out there. Just focus on what we're discussing, and that's all you need to know in order to understand how to test and work with APIs. Mohammed, can you show us how to save token and API calls in Postman? Sure, I'll show you that once more. So, what was it? Sign up. So right, I went ahead and did the sign up, so I know the email I used, and I'm not sure if this is a new one. I'll just do this, sure. So I'm creating a new account right now, and then on this login, when we're logging in, I'm just updating the username, send. Now I have this new token. So this is the token that you need and that you will be adding as your bearer token whenever you try getting something. So here, right, we have our get, we have our headers, and within this value here, we start off with bearer, which is just, and it's in the documentation. That's why we have it, right? And so just to go back here, here, here we are, right? And so that's why we have bearer. It's a requirement for the documentation. I think bearer is also, it might be just common across the board when it comes to access tokens. Not sure if you can confirm that, Dennis, but I know I've seen bearer commonly used.
Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah, very
Right.
common.
Yeah, so whenever you're using an authorization token, you're going to preface it with that bearer keyword, and that is where you put that token.
Yes. Yeah, I'm about to save it to the Postman. Can you click on the setting on the? It's about the sense. Yeah, right there. Yeah, environment, and I think we can add here some stuff like environment.
Yes, we can. And I would say I'm saving that for our next class on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
No worries. You're good. But yeah,
Thank
Postman, you could do a lot of things with Postman. We're just touching the surface right now, just focusing on the APIs, right? So play around with that. And then come Wednesday, we will show you a little bit more about what Postman can do and how you can automate some of these test cases without knowing a lick of code.
Robert.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can we test API just by using only terminal?
That's a good question.
Yeah, you can use curl command when it comes to Mac or Linux, but it's not gonna be that super user friendly.
It's not a very easy unit.
And it wasn't built for actual testing. You can check some stuff real quick over there, but here you can actually write test cases.
Okay, thank you.
Which makes Postman our testing tool.
Yeah, great point. Dennis.
Terminal is not a testing tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So terminal is super powerful. Just know terminal isn't always the easiest, and you need to have a good understanding of Linux or MS-DOS and how to deal with all of that. So there's utility, there's a time and place, but for this, no, we're not going to be doing that. Any other questions?
Actually, I just want to make one comment about saving the tokens, like in the headers. When you see the presets, or when under the headers, you see presets over there. When you see headers, go to headers, and where so here you actually can create a preset, and whenever you actually create a new request, you choose the preset, and all those headers that you created for this particular request, all those headers will automatically upload in a new request. So yeah, I hope it answers the questions. Can you show how to save tokens in API in Postman, basically?
Yeah, one way to go about it, and there's ways for us to execute all of these at once, and we will get into all that on Wednesday. Anything else, guys? All right, then I think we're good for today. Remember, when you guys start testing the API stuff, the documentation is here within Confluence under WoStork. So check it out. And if you want to play around with more API URLs, just open up that network console and take a gander at what the URLs are. So that's all for today, guys, and we will continue on Wednesday. Have a good evening, and I will speak
Robert, sorry. When you are just hired, so where you have to take this documentation? Who you have to ask? Can you give me this documentation?
So it's either going to be existing already. There's most likely going to be something existing already. How thorough it is depends. And even if it doesn't, something's going to exist somewhere because the developers had to reference something, right? There should be some documentation, but the same way we're reverse engineering right now by just opening that console log or the Chrome Dev Tools and looking at the network traffic, you could do the same thing. So not saying that that's what you will be doing. Hopefully there is going to be some sort of documentation already existing, so you can go ahead and just reference that when you're doing testing.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, have a good evening, and I will speak to you on Wednesday.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
See you Wednesday.
Bye. Bye.